Everest Live, how's it going? Wednesday, May 6th, I'm here in our beautiful dining tent with the fake flowers behind me at base camp. And we're here for the Ask Me Anything. I'm really excited to answer your questions, interact with our community. We're going to start with a brief sort of daily dispatch update. There's not a whole lot to report. Basically, we've seen another day of rotations. Another 100 plus climbers went up last night. There's a lot of climbers on the mountain in Camp 1 and Camp 2 acclimatizing. Ropes are fixed all the way up to and beyond Camp 3, so a lot of climbers are able to get that extra altitude boost on their acclimatization rotations. And it means also that base camp right now is really kind of quiet and lonely, which we have been enjoying quite a bit. We're still busy, but things have mellowed out for a minute. In other news, things are looking positive. Can't make any promises, but there are positive signs around the heavy lift drones flying again in the next few days. That's great news. The weather today was kind of crummy, but that's life here in the mountains. So that's basically the spattering for Everest news. It's sort of business as usual. Oh yeah, the last piece too is, there are rumors out there. Now we've started this game where everyone's like, when are the first summits? When's the weather window? Which is an impossible game. You can't predict the weather that far out, but everybody still tries to, including me. So what we're looking at is it does seem like there's going to be a weather window on May 11th. Past 3 years, that's been the first day that it's summited. That's the usual first weather window. That's probably going to happen again this year. Whether or not the rope fixing teams will be on the summit for that remains to be seen. I think it's probably more likely the rope fixing teams will be up for the second weather window, which is usually a few days after that. There's like a break of bad weather window comes. The big issue in terms of when we'll see the first ascents is going to be, can they get enough oxygen supplies high on the mountain? So there's a ton of questions already coming in. So I'm just going to start taking them one by one, and we're just going to go as we go. And thanks everybody for tuning in to our first Ask Me Everything live from Everest Base Camp. This is open to our entire community. So the first question is, any Yetis? We're opening up Pandora's box here when you start talking to Ben Ayers about Yetis. To keep it somewhat short and interesting, the Yeti phenomenon, right? Like this is this legend of the abominable snowman. The Everest region is one of many areas in the Himalayas, along the Chinese-Tibetan border, where Yetis have existed in legend. Here in the Khumbu region, there are still existing like bones and artifacts from Yetis that people have tested. Tests have come back as humanoid or goat or unconclusive. But interestingly, in the Pangmashe Monastery, which is my favorite monastery in the Everest region, there is a fake Yeti skull, because the real Yeti skull and sort of hand bones that were there were stolen some years ago. And a trekker who worked on the Lord of the Rings films, who was like a costume designer, art designer, took photographs of the originals and made true replicas from them using Hollywood techniques. And those are now in the monastery. Kind of an interesting story. Something for you all to check out when you come up here to visit us at Everest Base Camp next season. Okay, question number 2. Hey, Ben, impressed with your humanitarian contributions to Nepal. Thank you. And short films. Thank you. How did I end up in Nepal? I came to Nepal in 1998 as a student. I had 2 loves at that time in my life. I was really into climbing and I was really into poetry. And for some reason, I grew up, kind of a sheltered middle-class kid in New Hampshire. And Nepal seemed like a place I needed to go. It was so far away from anything I'd experienced, and my love and ambitions for climbing are what brought me here. And that's where I learned the language, and that's where I actually first started working with porters. When I first went on expeditions, I saw the porters carrying the goods for all the climbers and expeditions. And I think for me at that time, I was trying to figure out, like, I don't know, it's going to sound really cheesy, but go with me here. Like, I think for me as a 19-year-old man, I was trying to figure out, like, what does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to, like, be tough and awesome and have a great life? And, like, and what I found was that these porters were way more like hardcore than any of the foreign climbers, and I was interested in that, and that's what drew me in. And then, so to my surprise, which shouldn't have been to my surprise, but to my surprise, these porters were also very like erudite and intelligent and poetic people, and Nepalis in general are very like musical and artistic people, and so that's what drew me in. And basically, I have just been trying to figure out ways ever since to stay in Nepal. And I feel like my time here, especially with Everest Live as well, this is like the latest thing I'm doing just to try to pay my debt back to this country, because it's given me such a like a wonderful, like vibrant, deep, and enjoyable life. I've learned so much about how I want to be in the world from this place. And so that's how I got here. And that's why I'm still here. So next question, and apologies for going fast, but we've got tons of questions and this is great. So do I have any favorite documentaries or books that I can recommend about mountaineering? This could also be a 45-minute answer. Short list: Himalaya, A Human History by Ed Douglas. It's a little bit academic, but it's a story of how people came into the Himalayas from early migration all the way up into modern climbing. And Ed does a great job of sewing that all together in a way that makes sense and is actually fun to read. It's a tome, like it's a big book, but it's definitely worth checking out. Other books, of course, like Touching the Void by Joe Simpson, one of the best mountaineering books ever written. Gosh, there's just so many. 30th year anniversary of Into Thin Air. Into Thin Air, I feel like as a book, as an idea, as a moment in time, is something we can discuss a lot about. It totally changed how Everest is seen in the world. In some ways, I think that are helpful. In some ways that I think we're still trying to reconcile now. But it's an important book and worth reading. If you're interested in all the stuff we're talking about, like trying to make sense of the Everest climbing industry, trying to make sense of like what Everest is and how it fits into our modern times, there was a book that came out a few years ago called Everest Incorporated. And it's a book about the climbing industry, how it developed and how it got to be where it is now. I actually, when I first picked up the book, was expecting to not like it. And I ended up being blown away by how accurate it was and how well the story was told. So that's a really good primer. Basically, you can read Everest Incorporated and understand. You probably just don't have to listen to me anymore because it's a very good primer on like how the industry became what it is and where it goes. But please still listen to me because that gives me a reason to be here at Basecamp. Moving down. Oh, documentaries. I mean, so many documentaries about mountaineering to check out as well. Gosh, I mean, there's just so many. I'm trying to think of some good ones that we've seen in recent times. I mean, there's all the classics, right? You've got like 14 Peaks, you've got Into Thin Air, you've got all of those. My favorite climbing movie of all times is The Alpinist, made by Sender Films. It's a bit of a melancholy movie, but I think it does a better job than any other film that I've seen of taking an honest look at the psychology of climbers and takes an honest look at both the brilliance and the beauty of climbing, but also the human consequence of that. And so that's probably one I would recommend right off the bat. Just wanted to thank you and Andy about how much enjoy. Thanks, everybody. Well, thanks for all the shout outs, everyone. Like, honestly, too, like, thank you all for our community. Like that, it just makes it so rewarding for us to be here and to share this with you. So why do the rotations leave base camp late at night? We're actually working on a little piece about this. It's something that you don't, like, as a casual observer, you don't necessarily like think about. So last night, the camp that we're staying at here, we're sort of embedded with a group of climbers, with our friend Arnold Koster, who you all have met. So Arnold's got this group of clients, and he's briefing them on heading up on their first rotations. And one of the things he said like 3 times in the briefing is sleep is overrated, right? So when you get into climbing big mountains, true Himalayan mountaineering, there's a lot of suffering that happens, and there's not a lot of sleep. It's hard to sleep during the day because it's so hot, but you travel at night. You always leave at night because that's when the weather's the coldest, and that's when the icefall and other dangerous areas are the most stable. So remember the helicopter rescue we saw yesterday morning? That happened at 5:45 in the morning. That's right when the first sunlight came into the Khumbu icefall, right? So the sun comes in, the water in the seracs, in the cracks, that the ice, it turns back to water. It gets smaller. Things get less stable. In the evening, when the sun goes down, the temperature decreases immediately. Everything gets bigger. That's when things all fall apart, and that's when people get hurt. So you travel at night because it's safer and it's also cooler. Ironically, up in the Western Khum, doing Camp 1 and Camp 2, if you're up there in the middle of the day, it's almost too hot. It like takes you twice as long to get from one place to another because of the solar radiation bakes you. So traveling at night is the safest, most efficient way to do it. And so all trips that leave, even the Sherpa teams, the high altitude workers that are going up, ferrying loads, shuttling goods, everybody's working at night. The night shift here is when things happen. It's just normies like me that stay up during the day. Do I live in Nepal year round? I lived in Nepal year round, full time, 100%, basically up until COVID. Over the past like 5 years or so, I've started spending more time in the States, wanting to be closer to my family. My father passed away. My wife's family are also there. And it's one of the things that Nepal has taught me, like I was saying, I came to Nepal when I was like 19, and now I'm not 19, I'm 48. And I've realized that it's probably time for me to start hanging around with my family a bit. In Nepal, family is so important, and I've seen the beauty and the importance of that. I'm trying to incorporate that more into my own life. So I'm in Nepal now for about 7 months a year, something like that. I'd like it to be a little bit more. It all depends on work. So I'm kind of living a dual life between here in America and then wherever I am on other film shoots or whatever life requires me to do. This is great. Is drone for okay? Yeah. So the drone supply, airlift, are they operating? There's stuff that I'm learning that I'm not authorized to speak about out of my friendship with the airlift team, but let's just say that things are in process and there's a lot of optimism about the heavy lift drones flying again soon. We do have front row seats on the first flight that they do, so you'll hear about it first here at Everest Live. I'm hoping that will happen quite soon, but that's all I can say about that publicly right now. Hi, Mississippi. I'm loving our Mississippi contingent, by the way. Keep it up. Tell your friends. This is awesome. Are Sherpas required to make a summit quota each season to keep their positions with the expedition companies? That's a really interesting question. Answer is definitely not. One of the things about that I find fascinating about mountaineering on Everest and the way that these expeditions are run is there is no set plan for anything. There's an idea. There are best practices. There are ways that things work, but the systems are so chaotic in everything from weather to the icefall to seracs to everything, helicopters, clients getting sick or not sick. It's a constantly changing, moving sort of thing. And you've got hundreds and hundreds of people on the mountain. So for one Sherpa, he generally, might be assigned to a certain client, but then that client gets sick and another client decides they want another Sherpa or whatever. It's often changing quite a lot. So that kind of like rigorous benchmarking for them to keep their job doesn't happen. The way that Sherpas kind of maintain their job or that they move up in their role is by being strong and talented climbers. More and more, it's about Sherpas also in the off season, making sure that they're getting the technical training that they need to move up from being sort of like an assistant guide, being somebody who's like, ferrying goods and supporting, carrying oxygen, to being someone who can actually work with the clients and help clients, learning about how you manage people, learning how you manage safety in the mountains. There's all those kind of steps up. But there isn't this like rigid sort of like do or die sort of like we're going to vote you off the island thing for Sherpas. Generally speaking, their performance is obvious. The Sherpas that do well are the people that work super hard, have great personalities, just like honestly in any other industry in the world. It's quite similar. Here just happens to be really cold and tough and, extreme. All right. Oh, someone's got Luffy Baka. You're coming up to camp. Look us up. We would love to see you. Come have a cup of tea with us at our camp. I'm getting lost in the comments. Okay. What is base camp like when someone passes on the mountain? Are there particular services or traditions? And then they said, rest in peace, Lakba Dendi Sherpa. In terms of, when people do die on the mountains, there isn't necessarily like a standardized way to remember that person. By and large, because things here tend to also be organized and affiliated between different camps, right? And so if there was someone from, I don't know, the Russian camp at Seven Summits Club that died on the mountain, we would hear about it, we would know about it, we would have our own experience with that. But we wouldn't necessarily have access to like being able to go and memorialize that person because we may not know them, and also that's probably not what they would want to do. There's one of the things in base camp is like travel between different companies' camps is not super common. Part of that is also because like there's a lot of germs at base camp. People don't want people like spreading COVID around and running around. So everyone kind of is in their own group. But then when people do pass away, when a high altitude worker passes away, when a client passes away, that's something that the individual groups deal with in their way. There's also a lot of process and procedure with that, right? How does the body come off the mountain? Is there a rescue involved? All that stuff. So there isn't necessarily like a certain ritual for that. For the members of the Sherpa or the Nepali community that do die while working on Everest, like with Lakba Dendi Sherpa, typically, 99% of the time, the services, the memorial services for them happen in Kathmandu because that's generally where their communities are, or back in their village, and the bodies are brought there for those rituals to be performed by their core family. It is something that impacts us all, but it's not necessarily something that's so sort of rigorous. But that's a great question. Thank you. Hi, Ben. Any pointers on how to learn the Nepali language? Good resources are hard to find. My best advice to you is like, buy a one-way plane ticket, man. Like, come over here, like hang out for a month and, find a family who doesn't speak English. And that's how I learned it. I just literally was here. The thing about learning Nepali, like it's hard to find like a Duolingo Nepali, that kind of stuff. But when you're here in Nepal, like you get into a taxi cab and you speak in like a little bit of broken Nepali. And the next thing you know, like you're going to the taxi driver's house for tea. Like people are so excited about that gesture of trying to understand and appreciate and celebrate Nepali culture, and it catches on really quick. So my advice to you is just spend as much time as here as you can. Come on vacations, go trekking, go rafting, do stuff, hang out, and try to pick up the language as you go. Also, I don't know where you live, but Nepalis are everywhere. Like the Nepali diaspora is a very motivated and a very, very like diverse group all over the world. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Nepali community right nearby where you are. There's probably a Nepali restaurant there. Go make friends. Ask them. See if you can buy them a cup of coffee or hang out. Like by and large, I'm generalizing here, but by and large, one of the things I've loved about my life in Nepal and with Nepal has been how welcoming and open the community is here. And that's something I think you all, who are interested in that world can definitely lean on a little bit. Like, don't be shy. Don't be afraid to make friends. And that's probably the best way to learn language. Finally got to my advice. Make a lot of Nepali friends. And I bet you the language will come to you pretty quickly. It's not a hard language to learn. It's quite fun and you can pick it up pretty quickly. Hi, Ben. I wondered if you wanted to climb Everest at some point in time. It's interesting. So before I started doing this Everest Live thing, when I was covering Everest for Outside Magazine, living in Nepal, I had ambitions. I had an opportunity to climb Everest in 2019 on the north side as part of a Nat Geo expedition, but I didn't end up going on that expedition because my father wasn't well. And so at those times, I definitely had ambitions. But now that I've lived at base camp for like a season and a half, I don't know if I want to climb Everest. Like, it's really funny. Like, there's a part of me that does very much, but there's also a part of me now that has seen it up close, that I really understand what it takes to get to the top. And I think there's a lot of this misconception out there that climbing Everest is like a cakewalk. It's easy. Anybody can do it. The truth is, probably anyone can sign up for an Everest expedition, but not anybody can get to the summit and back safely. And for me, I think that, so yeah, no, there's a part of me that definitely wants to climb. And there's a part of me that definitely, I'm not ruling out trying it someday, but I'm not going to climb Everest until I climb Manaslu first, and until I climb a few other 7,000 meter peaks first to get that experience, because I want to, when I climb Everest, I want to enjoy it. And I also want to understand, the thing that I don't know is pushing up to the summit of Everest, even with oxygen, is an extreme and difficult endeavor. I've witnessed that from afar enough to understand what that, have an idea of what that takes. And I kind of want to make sure that I'm up for that on a peak that's maybe a few hundred meters shorter before I go and try to yeet my way up to the top of the highest place on earth. I feel like, to me, in my own personal opinion, that's being respectful of the mountain as well, and of the seriousness of the mountain. But that's how I feel about it personally. So I know that's a bit of a wishy-washy answer, but that's honestly how I feel. I really haven't thought about it, but I do, like, if you ask me, like, do I want to climb Manaslu? Like, hell yeah. Like, I definitely want to make time for that. Like, that's something that I really like want to do in my life. Arnold and I were talking yesterday. Like, I want to go climb Denali. Like, there's a lot of other stuff that I want to do that I would see as like a stepping stone to that. But like next year, I'm not going to go up Everest because I need some time to get ready for that and to make sure it's the right thing for me. All right. Where are we? Hello from Australia. Hi, Australia. Do the first rotations start later than usual due to the Serac? Will climbers still be able to complete their full rotation before the weather window, likely on the 11th? Yes, the rotation started way later than usual. Our plan was kind of to show up here end of April. That's usually when the first rotations are done. First rotations kind of boring, as you're witnessing with me being on this AMA with you, which actually has worked in our favor. But our plan is usually to come like after the first rotations. That's when things start getting exciting. So we're way late. You know, we're a week and a half late for that. But like, will climbers be able to complete the full rotations for the 11th? I think in terms of like clients, like if we're talking about climbers as like, you know, clients, guided clients, there's no way that guided clients will be able to get up on the 11th. There's not enough equipment on the mountain. This is my personal opinion. It's just not, the infrastructure isn't there, but the rope fixing teams might make it. There might be like one or two crazies that follow them up, or people who are like climbing independently. Yeah, so that's how I see it. I don't think we're going to see clients getting to the summit that early, but I also don't think we're going to see the season being like artificially condensed. Like, there's a lot of May left. Like, we got a lot of time to get to the top. And there's, again, usually these like great patches towards the end of the month when the mountain's empty. I'm hoping and I'm fairly confident that we'll see that again this year as well. Arnold, how'd that sound to you?
Yeah, good.
Arnold agrees with me.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, Arnold agrees that there's plenty of time. Hi from Florida. How's the weather? Weather today was kind of cold and snowy. Yesterday was like bright and beautiful. It's kind of, as you can see behind me, it's just kind of foggy, but it's okay. Like, we're all right. It's been an abnormally warm spring, though, and I think that's part of what we're seeing in the ice fall, and that's definitely going to be a factor in climbing this year. Base camp is like a running river. Like, I feel like the warmth at base camp right now is what we were seeing at the end of the season last year. Like, already the walkways, the infrastructures that have been put up on the glacier is kind of melting out. So we're having an abnormally warm spring, which, you know, it's pleasant at base camp, but it's not great for climbing. It's not great for the mountains. I would much rather trade some cold days for the climber's safety than the pleasure of walking around in glacial streams all day, which is what we've been doing. All right, let's see. Will I carry more gear other than caps? I love this channel. Yeah, so we've got caps, we've got hoodies, we've got t-shirts. Is that it, Andy?
Beanies.
And beanies. We got beanies. So that's what we've got. Like, again, like
anything else you want.
Yeah, if you want anything else, let us know. Like, we'll figure out a way to make it. Hell, I mean, I'll get it made in Nepal and bring it over to you and ship to you, whatever, like anything. Like, we're terrible capitalists, friends. So help us out here. Tell us what you want. We'll try to get it to you. Again, we're just trying to pay for our rice at base camp. But check out our Shopify store. We'll make sure that we keep that link in our bio of our Instagram. We'll keep it in the YouTube bio, so you guys can check it out, support us. We really appreciate that. Spread the word, tell your friends. And thanks again, honestly, for like associating with what we do. I'm going to digress here. It's one of the things that we've been talking a lot about. Like, when you look at a lot of the other coverage of Everest and a lot of the other channels that are doing similar stuff to what we're doing, you know, it's one of the, like, the constant conversations at base camp with all of our friends here in the climbing industry is why, like, negative coverage of Everest gets so much traffic. It gets so much travel. And the critique and the kind of the, like, you know, the shade is what goes viral, right? This whole idea, Everest guides are poisoning their clients, right? We all remember that from a couple weeks ago. Like, that kind of stuff is what people want. And for us, like, you know, we're really committed to telling things as they are. We don't want to shy away from the challenges and the problems and the ways that things can be better. Like, we're committed to making Everest a better place. But we feel like to do that, you have to be truthful and celebratory. And it actually, like, I think it probably puts us at like a social media disadvantage because we're not out there like clickbaiting this stuff. So all of your support, buying our beanies, subscribing to our base camp VIP thing, like, it really helps us. It's affirming for us. It helps us cover our costs and gives us a shot at coming back up here next year. And it just, thank you all for being a part of our community. Sorry, I'm getting like all emotional about it, but that is genuinely how we feel when you ask me if you can buy something other than a beanie. So yeah, thanks everybody. We love you. All right, you can tell that I didn't wear my glasses, and there's so many questions. This is amazing. So now I have to figure out where we are. How's the weather? Australia. I'm so sorry. Okay, so what is it about Everest? She has this indefinable draw, right? I know she's the tallest mountain, and there's such a rich, tragic, and triumphant history. What is it that keeps me coming back? Oh, I missed one from Florida. I'll get to that in a second. I've said this before. What keeps me coming back to Everest is there's an energy here. There's something about being at base camp that's really special. There's the community, the friends that I've made on the mountain are incredible. Like, it's just like really amazing people. But I think also for me, like, personally, what keeps me intrigued and keeps me covering this beat is I really, like, for me as a person in the world, and I think some of this is like why I've like spent my life in Nepal and all this stuff, is like, I'm really trying to figure out in life, like, what is life about? Like, what does it mean to be a human? How do you be a good human? How do you like live your life gracefully? And I've never been to a place where I've learned more. I've been able to observe more about human nature in one day than I have at Everest Base Camp. You have the best and the worst and everything in between of human nature, everything from gossip and politics to heroism and kindness, from like great camaraderie and friendship and humor to real dealing with real life stuff like life and death. And why do we pursue life and death? These are really big, heavy questions. And for me in life, like, I've always wanted to just be around that, because pursuing and answering those questions is what gives me meaning in my life. And I just haven't found anywhere else that gives it on that scale. I think Everest, being the tallest point on Earth, attracts a certain type of seeker, a certain type of person that is also in some way consciously or subconsciously trying to do that too. And for me, that's what keeps me here. That's the honest, like, kind of weird what goes on in Ben's brain answer to that. Hi, Florida. Have I climbed Everest? I guess I answered that earlier. No. Would I like to? Again, yeah, maybe after some experience, but I haven't climbed Everest. I think for me, there's a question like, how do I justify being a journalist about Everest without having been to the top? It's something I think about. It's an experience that I would like to have to be more well informed. But I feel like what I bring to the table is my journalistic experience and perspective, and my also knowledge of Nepal and the culture and the place here. It gives me access and it allows me to sort of speak about it. But I also try to acknowledge the fact that like I really don't know what it's like above Camp 2, and but I talked to a lot of people about it, so I try to aggregate all that. But nope, haven't climbed. Was that it? 10 minutes. I have 10 minutes left. Okay, so then I am so sorry. I'm gonna have to like pick and choose the interesting questions, but this has been so great. We're gonna do this again. Also, if sign up for our base pay. I hate terrible capitalist here. Sign up for our Basecamp VIP because every day we do these live daily dispatches and we have an Ask Me Anything after. It's a great time to be able also to just throw your questions at me every single day. I'll be happy to ramble at you then as well. Okay, any interesting questions? Can you see climbers on the mountain from base camp? Yes, you can see them going up through the icefall from base camp in the mornings and in the evenings. You can't see them beyond that because the Western Coombe kind of tips over. Is it typical to stick with the same Sherpa from year to year and mountain to mountain? In some cases, in many cases, yes. It's very common for a climber to develop a relationship with their Sherpa. They become climbing partners, but that isn't always the case. It totally depends on the climber and the client and also on the Sherpa. What's the most challenging climb I've done in my life? What's my favorite climbing experience? And have I ever ventured higher than base camp on Everest? I've climbed a ton of trekking peaks here in Nepal. I've done a lot of rock climbing and so on and so forth. I wouldn't consider myself like a hardcore climber. I think I realized early on that I don't necessarily have that like drive to make it the only organizing principle in my life. I think porters in Nepal like is where I channeled that energy. I think probably the most intense climb for me is I did a climb on Pisang Peak with my good friend Abiral Rai. The two of us just kind of like didn't acclimatize and went up and climbed the 6,000 meter peak. And it was super fun and super sketchy and everything you wanted a mountain to be. But the thing that defined that for me was my friendship with my friend Abhi. He's kind of my Nepali brother, and that was a really great experience. Shout out to you, Abhi. He's actually in the next camp up, guiding for climbing the 7 summits. Is there climbers on the north side? Not really. No commercial expeditions on the north side, but the Chinese are allowing research expeditions. So we've heard that there might be some Chinese teams over there, but I don't have a whole lot of information about that. Does Everest Base Camp have a main command center? Nope. Everest Base Camp is like a bunch of different clusters, and they all have individual command centers. There's one Himalayan Rescue Association, which is like a medical tent and rescue facility that is used and helps out with all the camps. The SPCC has their own camp, which helps out. But generally, Everest Base Camp is like a conglomerate of these small neighborhoods that kind of all do their thing together. Justin Sackett, Ryan Mitchell. Unfortunately, Ryan got hate. What's Justin up to? Justin's on a rotation. We will be talking with him when he's back down. Justin is committed to continuing with his climb. We'll see how that goes. It's gonna, yeah. It's great. It's a big challenge for Justin, right? Like hasn't climbed anything higher than Amada Blam. Now he's going for Everest without oxygen. That's a big bite to take. So we'll see how they do. I hope it goes well. We'll talk to him. The northern route. Okay. Hi, Vermont. Represent. How long is the trek to base camp? 11 days. Generally speaking, 11 days. You don't want to shave off of that. You need to acclimatize. You want to enjoy your life. 11 days to base camp, and then you can get back down in like 3 or 4. Daily dispatch from the summit would be crazy. It would be crazy. Maybe next year. Let's see what happens. Curious how I feel at base camp altitude. They were there in November, and you're wondering how I was feeling. I actually this year feel great. If any of you remember tuning in last year, I felt like trash last year. But that was because I had COVID and the Kumbu cough, and that wasn't great. this year I've been feeling really strong. I don't know. I feel like I'm generally good at altitude. Now that I said that, I'm probably screwed. But this year my numbers have been good and I've been feeling strong and active. So yeah, it's good. But to the Everest Base Camp trek thing, I took my time getting up here, making sure I was super acclimatized. And I even like, because we're working and I'm not like trekking and this isn't like a health spa purification thing for me, I take a half a dose of Diamox. That just helps take the edge off and it keeps my immune system up. And that's helped me a lot, sort of stay on top of things this year so I can talk at such a rapid rate trying to get through these questions before Andy kicks me off of this in 10 minutes. 5 minutes. Okay. Ben, are comms good? Direct from Everest Base Camp to the summit from Tucson, Arizona. Yes, with a radio. You can radio up to the summit. You can't shout to the summit. You can't internet to the summit. But each team carries their own radios. They have their own frequencies. They're in constant contact with one another. It, generally speaking, I mean, there are times that the conditions, the weather, the whatever, things don't work out. But generally speaking, there are comms all up and down the mountains within the teams. But there isn't like 3G internet, you know, that kind of stuff. Base camp is pretty well outfitted, but above that, you're pretty much cut off. You're going to miss, you know, you're probably going to break your Wordle streak once you head up on your rotation to Camp 1. Yeah, 150 viewers. Hit that like button. Thanks, everybody. All right. So what's the worst moment I've had in the past 7 days? Flying a drone into my face, obviously. But I'm much better now. I'm looking forward to getting my stitches out. And I'm sure we'll do like a live Ask Me Anything as the Iranian doctor at base camp takes my stitches out. That'll be great. Well, thanks everybody for all. Heard any updates on Ryan? Ryan's out climbing back in America, snowboarding, living his life. I think for Ryan, you know, poor guy, like, he just, you know, he came here, wasn't feeling good. The biggest thing climbing Everest, man, is like staying healthy. It's one of the hardest things to do, but that's always what like cuts climbers down. And the common cold, a chest infection, pneumonia, that creates pulmonary edema, all these other altitude issues. That's why you want to take 11 days to base camp. That's why you want to be like super hygienic, because that's what's going to get you up to the summit. Another unsolicited tip that comes from Arnold Koster, one of the great gurus on the mountain, is the laziest climber is the climber that's most likely to make it to the top. Here's, you guys want a real Everest live? Like, so one of the things at base camp, I think we're going to get some haters for this, but this is true. Right before dinner at Everest Base Camp, they deliver you a steaming hot towel that you can clean your face with. So with that, I am going to sign off. Thank you, everybody. We're going to do this again in a couple days. We'll make this a weekly thing. I had so much fun. You all are the best. Go to our store, share our merch, buy our merch, do all the stuff. And we love you so much. Thank you for being a part of our community. And this is Ben Ayers signing off from Everest Live. But now I have to peek to be able to end the stream. And again, have to end the stream. Boom.